Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
Hey, man, we got a little bit of everything going on in the world of basketball right now. TV, we were just talking about it before we locked in on the podcast. WBA season kicked off. Second round of the postseason. I mean, we're halfway there. We're going to get into a little bit of it later on in the podcast, but we're about halfway there. NBA lottery doubles. Come on, TV. Come on, man. Everything is shaking out where, I mean, basketball is in full effect, bro. I mean, we got a ton to talk about today. And I feel like as things kind of continue to progress, we're going to have even more storylines, not just within the playoffs, but across the NBA that are going to really open up some of these conversations for us here on the pod.
No, 100%. And I'm super excited to talk about it again. We have a good mix of everything. We got some series that have just finished up. We got some series that are tied up right now. The draft lottery. We got a couple more post-mortem teams. It's an action-packed episode. So you guys sit back, relax, and enjoy this one because we're going to talk hoops from basically all across the board. So we're going to get into that very shortly. But before we do that, we do have to plug our socials. Make sure you follow our individual socials at TV and Basketball, at The Routine Jumper. Those links can be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, make sure you follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content. You get the recaps, picks, you get all of the post-game reactions and stuff like that. Jay's been doing some of his walk and talk videos as well. We have all this stuff popping on the Instagram and TikTok, so make sure you check us out over there. In terms of the YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And if you're listening to us on any of the podcast networks, Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff, make sure you leave a review, subscribe. We appreciate all of y'all's support. Jay, you ready to talk some hoops? We have a lot to get into.
Yes, sir.
And Jay, we're going to start off with some of these series that just concluded. We're going to go with the one that honestly, on the time of recording, just finished off last night. The Los Angeles Lakers fall to the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder start off the playoffs going 8-0, taking care of business against the Lakers in Game 4. Probably the most competitive game of the series by far, but at the same time, the Thunder depth, too much overwhelming. It wasn't even a crazy SGA series, and the Thunder still look as dominant as ever. Jay, your thoughts on the series? It feels like we're kind of like rinsing and repeating through the Phoenix Suns stuff, but man, this Thunder team looks ready and loaded, and they didn't even have J-Dub in the series, Jay.
Yeah, I think that last part is the most important element, right? Is that this team just looks very well prepared to make a run, and it's just built out their depth. I mean, this is another series very similar, like you mentioned, to the Phoenix Suns series, where it's like, okay, yeah, there's talent there. You get Austin Reeves back as the Lakers. DeAndre Ayton, not his strongest series that we've seen, and very interesting in a situation where against Chet Holmgren, I mean, it was kind of like not even close either, right? And I thought that DeAndre Ayton's physicality could have been a real equalizer in the series. Ended up not really factoring in at all. I think that, for a Lakers team that had a hobbled Austin Reeves and no Luka Doncic, this felt pretty inevitable, right? I think that you mentioned it in passing of the idea that, like, this was something where the Oklahoma City Thunder are kind of just doing what they've been doing. And this dates back even to last postseason of just they are single-handedly running folks out the gym. And I think the most impressive part about it is we talk about the fact that, like, they haven't had J-Dub, right? But I also think a more important aspect of it is, like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has not really gotten off in this postseason, by the way. Like, he's had some solid games. He's Mr. Consistent in the ways that we've seen it. But, I mean, how many 18-point performances have we seen from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander throughout this postseason, right?
Yeah, like
a good handful already for a guy who, averages near 30 a game in a regular season. The fact that the Oklahoma City Thunder can get it from just about everywhere. A.J. Mitchell is pouring in. Jared McCain is showing up at big-time moments. Chet Holmgren, I think he may have been the best overall performer, I think, on both sides of the floor in this series, in my opinion. Oklahoma City, man, we're seeing little path to resistance right now. And we kind of expected it, given the fact that neither of the Minnesota Timberwolves, San Antonio Spurs, right, those teams didn't land on that side of the bracket. Yeah. So we saw a path through the Oklahoma City Thunder making the Western Conference Finals without too much of a pushback. But, I mean, you also got to get it done, right? And they've just because it looks that way doesn't mean that they don't have to get the job done, right? I mean, we thought the Rockets were going to get the job done against the Lakers in round one, and we saw how lopsided that series ended up eventually becoming. The Oklahoma City Thunder got the draw that they got, and they are taking advantage of it because now they're going to be able to kick their feet back up, and for at least another 2 games worth of 2 games worth of series left for the Wolves versus Spurs. OKC's just kicking back and waiting to figure out who they play next.
Yeah, freaking Shade said after the game too, like, I need to get myself back in rhythm because he was like kind of rusty. He even admitted like after the series was done, he was kind of rusty after the Sun series because like the like you mentioned with like the what's happening with the Spurs and Timberwolves right now, they had to wait for the Lakers. They had to wait for the Lakers to take care of business against the Rockets, and the Rockets, luckily for the Thunder, extended the series to like 6 games or whatever. So the Thunder, another series where they get about 2 games worth of extra rest for them, which is really nice. But Jay, you said it perfectly, and this is like kind of the biggest focus I want to like put like on the Thunder because the two guys that you mentioned, Jared McCain and AJ Mitchell, these guys weren't factors in the playoff run last year. You have to remember last year at this point, they were in a 2-2 series with the Denver Nuggets. That series that they had with them was going to 7 games. So even though the Thunder even had more regular season wins last year, they were still, had a more resistant path in the Western Conference playoffs. This year, yes, maybe the competition's a little bit worse. I mean, you're facing a Lakers team without Luka Doncic. You're facing a Phoenix Suns team, need I say more, compared to the rest of the competition in the West. But AJ Mitchell averaged 20 plus points per game in the second round. Jared McCain, multiple games where he gets 10 plus points, and he still plays only like 20 minutes, like less than 20 minutes a game. These two guys were Loki just like either of your AJ Mitchell, you were kind of the 11th or 10th or 12th man on the roster last year, so you didn't get much burn. And Jared McCain wasn't part of the roster. And these two guys have been such just difference makers on the court, making up for the offense that they're missing from Jalen Williams, and giving that outlet that I feel like we thought there was enough of it with the Alex Carusos of the world, the Isaiah Joes, and all that. But now Shea has even someone more reliable, someone who can even handle the ball now in AJ Mitchell. Jared McCain, someone who can move off ball anywhere in the 3-point line, and he's comfortable shooting it. Jay, even though they had less regular season wins here, they are just a more complete team. They have more layers to their team, and they're doing this for pennies on the dollar. Wasn't AJ Mitchell like a second round pick or something, or like along those lines?
Yeah,
Jared
yeah.
McCain, you gave up one of your chest full of first round picks in 2 seconds. They got better on the edges, and I didn't think they was gonna make this much of an effort already. I mean, maybe some people might see with AJ Mitchell before he was injured, he was like a 6-man of the year candidate. But Jared McCain, big time moments in the playoffs. There were times in the series where the Lakers were not pulling away but had control, and then the Jared McCain 9-0 run would just flip the momentum back to the Thunder. They have guys that can give level to this game, and like we said off the top, no J-Dub in this one, still no problem.
Dude, I think the most impressive part, and I had to pull it up because I had to make sure I really could encapsulate how nuts this is. Two of their better performers in this series, in Jared McCain and AJ Mitchell, as you mentioned, next season, with both of their team options picked up, are going to be at a combined value of less than $10 million hit towards the cap next year.
We can't keep letting
That's just
them do this,
unfair.
bro.
Like
We
that is
can't keep
just
letting them do this, bro.
unfair, son. Like to have that kind of, for context, right? Lucas Dort is going to be an excuse me. Actually, Spotrac is already updated for next season, so it's gonna be if you want the actual numbers, it's gonna be just under $8 million combined, TV, between Jared McCain and AJ Mitchell. For context, Lucas Dort's club option is worth $18 million by himself. Would be the fifth highest paid player on the team next year. Like, to know that those two guys have been equally, if not more important than Lucas Dort in this series. Probably significantly more important from an offensive perspective. Lou Dort's offense has not been the calling card for him in this Lakers series. The defense has definitely stood out for sure, though. For that kind of value at that kind of production level, I mean, OKC is playing with house money here. The funny part is, financially, doesn't financially, it doesn't even fully tell the full story. The most hilarious part about it is, again, you go back to not even having Jalen Williams available. What happens when you add that to what is an already humming OKC Thunder team? We've seen it in spurts throughout this season, but now, I mean, we go into the Western Conference Finals. I think we're gonna see J Dub, and I think actually the perfect series where they need him back would be one where maybe they end up catching the San Antonio Spurs, who they definitely have some smoke with.
Yeah, no, it's an embarrassment of riches. This is like the best problem to have if you're freaking Mark Daniel right now. You're like, man, this team we can get 40 points of production from AJ Mitchell and Jared McCain. Oh, but we have to add our All NBA guy and Jared and J Dub back. That's unfortunate. No, no, not really. This is just again embarrassment of riches. They're not
Yeah,
even freaking playing their lottery pick from this year because he's injured and Thomas Sorber. Another lottery pick in Nikola Topic is just rotting there on the bench. Like,
right.
and they had the 12th pick next year. Like it's insane how much is going. We're probably gonna talk about more in the offseason when like how they're gonna freaking manage the cap and all that. But again, the best problem to have if you're a team. Speaking of the Lakers, though, LeBron James could be final season. The team clearly wasn't good enough. Austin Reeves looked pretty damn hurt in the series, even though he put up some big offensive performances. But the turnovers were a massive issue in this series for him as well. Jay, I guess like the biggest talking point from here is have we seen the last game of LeBron James or even just LeBron James' last game as a Laker?
I mean, I feel like we've definitely seen our last game of LeBron James as a Laker. That part feels pretty definitive, just given a lot of the reports throughout the season that kind of indicate that the Lakers, to a certain extent, from a front office perspective, also may want it to be the last season for LeBron James. So that part feels a little bit more set in stone. I think the bigger and more interesting question is it over, right? Because I think obviously a lot of people will look at this season. I think a lot of people might just go back as far as the Houston Rockets series and say, you mean to tell me Braun can't play point guard for 2 more years? Right? I think there's a world where
Yeah.
you could convince him or convince people to believe in him as a guy who could still be a tertiary shot creator next to some real on ball guys. You think
Hmm.
about that Cleveland Cavaliers situation, you talk about Donovan Mitchell coming back, you use Evan Mobley as a trade chip to go get Giannis and then sign Braun. Holy crap. I mean, now all of a sudden, because you could just use the money you would have gave James Harden to go sign Braun. Fits better as a facilitating passer, still can be athletic, can play that small forward position, but also can balance as a point guard. I mean, if you want to be quite frank about it, it all also depends really on what LeBron James wants from a financial standpoint, right? Like, Braun could go to a team for a vet minimum if he wanted to, if it was just all about going to the best winning situation. That's going to be a big conversation around it too, right? Like, is Braun going somewhere that's just built around like a happy going away situation? Because he's said in the past or said throughout this season he's not looking for a farewell tour. So is he, if he goes somewhere else, is he doing it with like a swan song, into a career in mind? Or is he trying to go to the best position to win? Because those are two different conversations that bring up two totally different sets of teams. I think, in my personal opinion, there's only going to be a little bit of overlap, I think, as far as having that swan song everybody will love while also having the element of actually being able to compete for a championship in the closing moments of his career.
Yeah. No, I think you're right with that. It's gonna be like a bit of both. I'm not even like putting out like I'm not even gonna rule out the like return to the Lakers at this point. I think like it is gonna be like a big like point of like conversation if they want to bring LeBron, if again like you said, if they want LeBron James back. But I don't think like that reunion is a out of the possibility. Obviously, people are talking about Golden State, the Cleveland Cavaliers to return home for one last time. But I think at the end, I think like my general feeling after this is that I don't think he's done. I don't think he's done with his career just yet. If it's just one more year, sure, maybe, or 2 years max. But I think from the feeling of the series and kind of like how he's been going about things, I don't think that's the case. But if the Lakers do want to still compete, they still got Luka Doncic. Obviously, that's what the whole big trade is about. But they definitely need to work a lot on that, on the like the pieces around him because and we're gonna talk about that in the post mortem, not today, but in a different episode. But yeah, like that supporting cast is just not good enough, and they kind of say in the series. But I'm glad they're able to at least get to the second round at the very least, even without Luka.
I think that's the other thing too, right? I think that's one of those things you have to respect is that given the circumstances of where they were in the bracket and the circumstances of their team from a health standpoint, I mean, this was the ceiling. This
Yeah,
felt like the
100%.
ceiling for where they were. And I said this on TikTok and I still kind of really stand by it. Like, there's no shame in falling in a sweep to this version of the Oklahoma City Thunder, bro. Like there's nothing wrong with 4 games lost to the Oklahoma City Thunder when they are just playing at a full clip across the entire roster, leaking into the bench. Like, this is a team that is just a well-oiled machine, and if you have any kind of real flaw or any kind of significant talent gap, they are going to exploit it, and they've done it all season. They've done it dating back to last year. You can make an argument that they really started this whole thing the year prior, even though it didn't come to fruition beyond them, losing in the first round to the Dallas Mavericks. This is something that's been brewing for a while, and they're just kind of continuing on this warpath. There's nothing wrong with the Lakers falling to the Thunder in the manner that they did when you contextualize some of the other things involved, like the Luka Doncic injury, like Austin Reeves being hurt, like the fact that this Lakers team has had question marks about the center position all year long as far as how much they think they can or cannot trust DeAndre Ayton, right? Like, all those things factoring is equal, this was about as inevitable of a result as many probably could have anticipated.
Oh no, yeah, no, I'm 100%. Like, I mean, yes, they were able to get through the Houston Rockets and do their own turmoil as well, but the Lakers, especially when Luka Doncic had a ceiling, and I think they kind of even like broke through it a little bit without the Luka Doncic like aspect of it going into the playoffs. But yeah, this is as much as going to go. OKC proved that they were the better team and the more complete team. I mean, of course you would have won a 1 game, sure, and maybe that was going to be Game 4, but the Thunder were just showed that they were the better team from start to finish. Free throws or not, I know that was a big conversation throughout this series as well, but the Thunder clearly were the better team. There's a reason why they're the defending champs, and that's why they were able to get the sweep.
Yeah.
Jay, let's move on to the next series, though. Another sweep happened over on the east side. The New York Knicks sweep the Philadelphia 76ers 4-0. And Jay, the biggest thing I could think about going into like after the series is Celtics. What the heck, man?
Yeah.
How how did you
Yeah.
give up 3 straight games to this Philly team? Yeah, very surprised. But man, this Knicks team works really damn good. This offense is clicking at the right time. Jay, your thoughts on the series?
I mean, I think you summarize it best by using the Celtics analogy there of just like, man, Philly didn't look to me, Philly didn't look too different as far as philosophically how they approached the game, that much different from how they were in the series against the Celtics. That goes to show you not only the weakness in their center rotation and how Joel Embiid was able to exploit that a lot throughout that series, but quite frankly, I think another thing it does is reveals just how live and die by the three the Boston Celtics truly were. Because when you look at Philly from an offensive standpoint, like, yes, they're getting, strong performances across the board, but I mean, I don't feel like New York did anything insanely special in this series. You know what I mean? I don't think
Yeah.
there was anything insanely crazy that I felt like they did from a personnel standpoint. I even thought that like something they did have to really get their footing on was kind of just figuring out how to re-engage Mikal Bridges, because he toward the back half of that opening round series, it kind of seemed like he was starting to catch fire. And the question was just whether or not that was going to be a continued trend in the right direction, and it quite frankly has been. But yeah, it leaves major. I think this series almost tells, like you said before, it almost feels like it tells more about the Boston Celtics than it has to do with Philly or New York, if we're being honest. Like, I don't. Again, this is a weird series to analyze because I just feel like Philly got outclassed for 4 straight games. I don't think any of these games truly felt close, and even if they were in score, go back and watch the tape. It
Yeah.
feels like the New York Knicks controlled this series wire to wire. Um, and I remember saying on a TikTok, about this New York Knicks team coming out of round one, like, if Mikal Bridges is gonna play this way and be that additional, perimeter creator offensively for them, and still, have that uptick as a defensive player as well that you can rely on. I mean, this New York Knicks team is just in another tier, and they played like that other tier type of team throughout the entirety of all four of these games.
Yeah, this Knicks team looked like again just levels above this Philadelphia 76er team. Jalen Brunson really just got everything he wanted throughout this entire series. He had a bunch of those Hawks guys like chasing him around all of round one, and the Dyson Daniels and the Kill Alexander Walkers. They had multiple bodies, multiple physical bodies that can really slow him down. And honestly, he wasn't as efficient in round one. When you have just VJ Edge come over here and a bunch of those other small and then those other small guards you got over there in Philly, he was gonna eat. He was always gonna eat, and he had a fantastic series, almost averaging like 30 points a game, crazy good efficiency. Jalen Brunson was fantastic, and the Knicks were just able to get everyone going. I mean, the slow start to Mikal Bridges feels like eons ago. Like he's finally getting himself back in the mix again. Nothing too crazy, but at least he's like finding himself within the offense. Karl Anthony Towns, yes, the foul trouble is still a freaking problem. I feel like he gets like 5 fouls a game at this point, but his involvement in the offensive and in the offense throughout these probably like even going back to the final two games of the Hawks series, him versus that lineup, and now completely honestly outclassing Joel Embiid on the offensive end. Like he's really got himself involved in the Knicks offense, and it just looks a lot better when he's on the court. Again, he has to deal with the fouls, but he's been doing really good there. But the Knicks did what they were supposed to do, and we said after seeing how much the Cavs and the Pistons have struggled in the round one, even going into this round, Philly not being the perfect team, the Knicks look like they're the most complete team in the Eastern Conference, and would be kicking themselves if they didn't make it to the finals. The path hasn't been more clear, Jay, and I think even now they're figuring it out, especially in the offensive end, which is scary when you have both probably one of the best offensive point guards in the NBA in Jalen Brunson, and then when he's on freaking Karl Anthony Towns, one of the best offensive big men in the league, and now adding some of that passing element, this Knicks team looks like they are clearly the team to beat out East.
Yeah, New York is. You can't talk about this team as if they're flawless because there are still things that you have to
Yeah,
really lock
100%.
into. We'll of course probably talk about that more when we preview the Eastern Conference Finals. But of the three teams left in the Eastern Conference, the Knicks are the team I am the least concerned about as far as how how much their flaws could impact them in an Eastern Conference Finals, for example, or even as far as it playing in the NBA finals, like maybe once you start to get to like a more matchup dependent scenario, like the Oklahoma City Thunder, for example, then you'll have to kind of question that. But as far as coming out of the Eastern Conference is concerned, yeah, the New York Knicks have the least worrisome kind of questions compared to those other two teams in Detroit and Cleveland. So, um, I mean, if they're not the front runners in the eyes of many for coming out of the Eastern Conference, I mean, you're gonna have to really sell me on one of either Detroit or Cleveland because there is a lot to worry about for both teams. They're proving it in their own series, by the way, which we'll probably talk about.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about it very soon. But yeah, Knicks completely destroyed Philly. Just going quickly on the Philly side, there's two things I really like that stood out to me here. One, freaking the Philly crowd seemed non-existent. Jay, the biggest talking point was freaking the New York Knicks fans freaking traveling in bunches. And it felt like
Yeah.
half the arena was Knicks fans. That must have been very. And Travis Maxey like said after the series was done, like, yeah, it sucked. Like hearing like the Knicks continuously score and the crowd getting more and more excited as even though we're supposed to be the home team. And then yeah, I mean it's one of good to get. I have like one more thoughts on it, but like, what was your thoughts on that? Like seeing like all those like Knicks fans. I know they've done this in the past, but I mean like the idea of them like kind of just like taking over like Philly in that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's clearly an understanding of the fan base to realize, like, yo, we need to get out of this series in four, right? We watched Boston play with their food because that's essentially what happened, right? And Boston's been known for this. Like, this is one thing this is something that dates back even to like the Brad Stevens era. That like for some reason Boston just gets up in series and kind of just start to almost play themselves out of series in a lot of different occasions. This just happened to be another one of those. I think New York as both a team and their fan base kind of got this understanding like, yo, I'm not gonna lie, we need to go ahead and clear them out. And I think another thing is it sends a real message to whoever it is that comes out of that Detroit Cleveland Cavaliers series that like, yo, this is already not going to be a sweet series for you just from a talent discrepancy standpoint because like you said, Jalen Brunson, hopefully OG Anunoby is back healthy and ready. This
Yeah.
this extra time that they're going to have to get him, back on the fray should hopefully be really helpful. You have Mikal Bridges, you have Karl Anthony Towns, right? From a talent perspective, New York is already going to be a tough out. But now they've sent this message that, yo, like, this is our year. Like, everything is pointing to the sides of, like, yo, New York, NBA Finals, stars aligning. So, for Knicks fans to show out like that, for the Knicks to clear out Philly like in the manner they did, I think this is all about messaging. I think this is all about putting themselves in the right position to really get it done. And I think, again, one of the most important things, look back at last year's postseason. Last year's postseason was wire to wire the entire run for the New York Knicks. It felt like
Yeah.
every series for New York was like way harder than you could have expected for them
Yeah.
going in, right? And this year, they have just handled business. And I think they're going to be better for it. They're obviously going to be healthier for it. And I think it's going to matter a lot when it comes to whoever they do face in that Eastern Conference Finals matchup.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, of course, there's that aspect. And of course, like, even though, I mean, Tyrese Maxey was definitely talking about, if we were winning, maybe that wouldn't have been like as much of an issue because like that means the Phillies fans would set that up. But you gotta think of the logistics of it all. I mean, the MSG is crazy to get in. Like MSG is like probably like super expensive, and for these fans that probably look at these Philly tickets who are a lot cheaper, and the travel is not even as long, they're gonna make the travel. And Knicks fans can get crazy about that stuff, so they could definitely do that. But yeah, no, they did very well, and that's gonna be like it's gonna be just like really good, continuation on for like what they have because like ever since they won 2-2, I think they won like what 2-1 down to the Atlanta Hawks in round one. Ever since
Mm.
then, I feel like just like a switch flipped, and they were able to like just really get themselves into the series, and it's really good to see. Jay, just one last thoughts on the series, and just like your thoughts in general on these comments, because Embiid said after the series, after it was done, even though they got swept, he felt like this was a successful series for him. Now, before the season, there was a whole thing about him talking about how he just wants to have one healthy playoff series, that he would trade his MVP just so he can try and have a healthy run. And after this, I don't know if did you consider this a healthy run. I mean, he didn't even play half the season, but he did play a good chunk of the playoffs. What are your thoughts on like Embiid saying like even though like they lost in the way with that, there's still like a lot of positives to take out of it, including like seeing that his season was a success.
I mean, I think outside of what is a clearly a very unique injury,
Yeah.
right, going into the playoffs for Joel Embiid, the plan essentially did work, right? The idea of like Joel Embiid no longer playing back to backs, hopefully having more availability during the postseason, in which he actually did still play a relative amount of the postseason games for Philly. Um, it's tricky because at the end of the day, you still have questions about like whether or not Joel Embiid's durability also could have played a real factor in his inability to really dominate in a series like this one against New York. So there's still questions left out there because he did still come into the postseason hobbled. Um, but at the same time, I think there is a lot to like. I think seeing VJ Edgecombe, shine on the big stage, I think is a big deal. I think obviously Tyrese Maxey playing the way he did for, let's say, six of the games in this postseason, 5 or 6 of the games in this postseason, really shine in a real way. There's a clear glaring hole as far as that third guard. I bet they're missing the crap out of Jared McCain right now, who
Yeah.
feels like even more of a sell low on
Hmm.
than they could have even anticipated at the time. They called it selling high. I don't think their return
No.
nearly
Yeah.
matches the kind of production that Jared McCain is providing now for the Oklahoma City Thunder. So definitely kicking themselves in the back for that. Um, I could see why Joel is a bit optimistic coming off of this postseason, but I do think that the Philadelphia 76ers have a ton of roster construction questions that they are going to have to really, really hammer home as far as trying to get navigate this offseason, especially because they still have so much money tied up between just Joel Embiid and Paul George. if you want to go just from like a salary perspective, and I know that's kind of a weird way to look at this, and we're not going to go full post mortem or
Yeah.
anything, but 57 million for Joel Embiid next year, 54 million for Paul George, 40 million for Tyrese Maxey. I mean, we're talking almost 150 M's between just three players. So, as optimistic as he may be coming off of this season, you got three club options in Dominic Barlow, Trendon Watford, and Dalen Terry. VJ Edgecombe is the only other true rotation player under contract next season because Justin Edwards questions. Adem Bona, I think he could be a
Yeah.
solid backup rotation center, but questions. The Janiyah Broome experiment was wonky at best, so I don't really know how to see how they feel about that. They have a lot of questions. They have a ton of unrestricted free agents. Kelly Oubre, Quentin Grimes, Andre Drummond, Kyle Lowry's of course retiring. Shout out to him. But like, even if you feel like this was a very successful season, this offseason may not necessarily be the Sixers building off of it. It may be them just simply trying to maintain where they are at the moment. And unfortunate part about that is that with the Celtics getting a full version of Jason Tatum next season, with Tyrese Halliburton coming back to the Indiana Pacers with Ivica Zubac added to the roster and things of that nature. Like that, the Eastern Conference is going to be better. So staying pat might still see you go down in the standings. And this was
Yeah.
a team that, I mean, quite frankly, barely made the playoffs, right? So
Yeah. So yeah,
I,
I
I
mean,
see
I
the
guess
optimism, but there's a
personally,
lot of questions still.
yeah, no, I guess personally for him, it was a good step. Hopefully, that can actually just continue on to next year with a good off season and all that. But yeah, there's still a lot of yeah, like there's still going to be a lot of like issues like roster construction wise with this team, and we're gonna definitely talk about it in their post mortem. But yeah, the Knicks did their business, took care of business, and now Philly has a lot of question marks, especially with the amount of contract they have on that team. Jay, let's move on to the next two series, and these two series couldn't be more different than the sweeps because right now they're currently 2-2 apiece at each of them. And we're gonna start off with probably the most talk-worthy series of this entire playoffs, which is the
Yeah.
Minnesota Timberwolves taking on the San Antonio Spurs. Now, lots of different storylines happening in this game. Anthony Edwards coming back super early, and he went absolutely nuclear in that fourth quarter in Game 4. Of course, the Wemby suspension and all that, and the Wemby ejection that happened in Game 4 as well. But 4 games in, series is 2-2. Feels like it could be anyone's ball game. Jay, what are your thoughts have been on the series?
Also feels like if Wemby didn't go full WWE last game, they might have messed around and went up 3-1, right? I think that, that big hit on Nas Reed, the big elbow that gets him ejected was one of those things that I think also kind of, put things in a real perspective as well. I think if you really think about where things are for this series, a lot of the physicality stuff that was expected, I think, has shown itself throughout this series clearly,
Yes.
especially with the way that the Minnesota Timberwolves have guarded Victor Wembanyama in particular. I think that Stephon Castle has played really well. I think that Dylan Harper has played very well as well in this series. The numbers may indicate something different, but like I really need De'Aaron Fox to like really imprint himself in this series, quite frankly. I think that he's somebody that I feel like the numbers may make it seem like he's been very productive, but the shooting splits and some of the on-off numbers kind of indicate that this team is kind of doing a little bit of a better job without him on the floor. That's a smidget concerning to me. But I think the reality of the situation right now is like if Vic plays and he gets real burn, San Antonio, has looked like the better team for the majority of this series. Again, I mentioned it. If game 4 has a full, regular minutes run for Victor Wembanyama, I think they legit win that game. I think even if you go back to where that game was set up, like Minnesota was really struggling in the minutes that Victor Wembanyama was on the floor. All of a sudden, Vic goes out with the ejection. Anthony Edwards catches fire. And that's
Yeah.
where things start to translate after where the Minnesota Timberwolves start to kind of get the lead, put themselves in a strong position. And even though San Antonio's still very talented outside of Vic, Luke Cornett's just not going to apply the same level of offensive pressure. Only took 4 shots in this game, right? So he's not the same kind of volume scorer by any means that Victor Wembanyama is. And it creates a completely different dynamic because Vic also acts as a floor spacer. Luke Cornett doesn't bring that to the table as well. So I think Game 4 was very telling because it shows you just how important Victor Wembanyama is to this team. As far as being able to be competitive in this kind of environment. But I think it also was a sign for Minnesota, like, yo, okay, if we didn't know it before, we know now. In the non-Vic minutes, you know how like
Yeah,
with Nikola Jokic, it was like you gotta kill him in the non-Jokic minutes because it's you watch that when Jokic goes off the floor, that team falls apart offensively. They're like a -12 with
yeah,
Jokic off the floor. You look at the same situation with the San Antonio Spurs and Victor Wembanyama, like the dynamic is so much different from an offensive output standpoint. You use this Game 4 as a representation of like, okay, if we didn't know before, we know now. When Vic sits, we gotta go full throttle. Full throttle. We are pressuring the rim. We are putting a lot of emphasis on trying to score at the paint. Shout out to Nas Reed, who I think has quietly been really, really effective throughout this series. I think that right now, I still would lean if I'm picking who I think is going to win the series, I'm still leaning San Antonio, but I think that Minnesota, their fight is something that I think is definitely going to force this series to maybe even go 7. I mean, of course, it's got to go at minimum 6 now, which we expected.
yeah.
But I think that Minnesota has a real chance to push this to 7 games even. And I think they're gonna need all 7 of them to get the dub. If I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, no, this Wolves team is kind of doing what they did to the Denver Nuggets. Maybe not as dominant, obviously, because the Spurs team, that to the Spurs team, because of I guess again the other town, because again a lot of the Nuggets players just completely like fell short of expectations. But
Yeah.
this Timberwolves team is doing it the same way in the way of we're just gonna try and will a win, and like in whatever way possible in the series because they did that in Game 1 where they won defensively and they were able just to edge it out. But even in this game, Anthony Edwards said after the game, we kind of let our foot off the gas pedal once we knew that Victor Wembanyama was on. We thought it'd be easy, but it was like
Yeah.
this Spurs team. I mean, Dylan Harper and stuff were freaking fantastic in that second half onwards. So they really had to turn up, and they kind of clawed back at the end there in order just to get this win. This Timberwolves team can definitely beat the San Antonio Spurs team, and they showed it in this series because they're just able to will it and be able to outwork them. The Spurs, on the other hand, like you mentioned, when Victor Wembanyama's on the court, this there changes the whole freaking dynamic, and that's when it opens up the game for so many of the other Spurs players. Dylan Harper having a better turning up in a big way, Stephon Castle, but really, am I going to talk? Yeah, it's my biggest thing here with the Spurs though is that even though like Wemby has been like clearly the best player in the series, Jay, they kind of need more from De'Aaron Fox. They need more. They need a lot more from him, and that's kind of like
Yeah.
my biggest thing with the Spurs, like and seeing him throughout most of this playoffs, because besides that one game against the Blazers where he got 27 points, been pretty underwhelming. And that's for someone who they're paying $50 million a year to be that second star next to Victor Wembanyama. It feels like he doesn't have that overwhelming offensive ability that they were hoping that he would have to kind of like close out games. And he's coming up short against a very physical Minnesota Timberwolves team, and is being outplayed by the likes of Anthony Edwards, having like less impactful minutes than like a Nas Reed or an Ayo Dosunmu. Like this type of stuff like is kind of worrisome if you're someone like De'Aaron Fox, and you can see it near the end of Game 4 where it felt like for most of the quarter the Spurs were more leaning towards a Harper Castle backcourt, and then maybe just subbing in Fox in the final 2 minutes. So
Yeah.
Wemby, yes, he's been fantastic, and I think that his presence like back in Game 5, and I think the Spurs will win Game 5. Freaking angry Wemby, I think, is gonna really show his colors in this game and really try and dominate. But in order for me to be really confident about the Spurs, not just trying to win this series, but also in their potential matchup versus the Thunder, you need more from De'Aaron Fox and having these rough shooting nights and not being the guy they can confidently go to late in games.
Yeah, I think that I mean, of course, we know how dangerous Wemby is on both sides of the floor. You mentioned him kind of coming out and playing pissed off Wemby ball. I think that that's something that's going to be really important for a series like this one because of the fact that they do need to be able to match physicality. And they've done a pretty good job of doing that. I think even in that play with Wemby, you could see that the activity around the play was like it crescendoed from stuff that was happening prior to that possession, right? When it came to Jaden McDaniels, when it came to Nas Reed, of like they are putting the pause on him, and he is trying to over exaggerate the "Hey, get off of me! I'm trying to maintain, possession of the ball" thing. And I think that it goes to show you this series is going to be as knockdown, and drag out as we expected coming in, and I think it's played out that way. But I think you also have to commend Victor for being able to meet Minnesota at this level when it comes to the physicality. I think you look at Nikola Jokic, for example, in that series prior for the Denver Nuggets, did not deal with the physicality nearly as well. A very telling thing for somebody that a lot of people would consider the best overall offensive player in the NBA. Some would question that and saying that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is that guy now, but Nikola Jokic has had that crown for quite some time. Victor Wembanyama dealing with that physicality a little bit better. Didn't do a great job getting himself ejected last game, but I think the premise still stands that Vic in this series has lived up to what is necessary to be able to fend off a team built like Minnesota.
Yeah, no, 100%. He has like really like stepped up to the moment and just needs the other guys too. I mean, Dylan Harper's doing his best. Stephon Castle's having his moments, but yeah, looking at you, Darren Fox, you need to really have a better series in this because Anthony Edwards has been getting like actually pretty decent production from. I mean, outside of Julius Randle. I know we're not gonna talk about too much here, but man, he's had a rough series so far for this team. But Nas Reed stepped up big. Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert still providing really good defense on that end. The other guys are really showing up, and then like you have the other guys that are playing their ass off defensively when it comes to Terrence Shannon and all that. So yeah, the Spurs role players need to really match up the physicality, and I think that's going to be a big thing here. Um, but yeah, hopefully Wemby can continue to like still be a part of the series. By the way, were you surprised that he was able to play this game? Like, were you expecting him to be suspended after what you saw there?
Um, I think given that there was only a fine, but not necessarily any other more insane
There
uproar in
wasn't a
the
fine.
no,
There
no,
wasn't
I'm
a
saying
fine.
for the LaMelo Ball
Oh,
play, if
Lamelo
you remember
Ball.
the
Oh,
tripping
Lamelo Ball.
play,
Yeah, Lamelo. Yeah, yeah.
this was a bit more egregious, but still within the framework of the play and the physicality that's been built within the series. I think I'm more surprised that he didn't get the fine off the flagrant two,
Yeah.
because
Same
that
here.
feels almost kind of just baked in.
Yeah, same here.
Not nearly as surprised that he didn't get ejected just because I feel like excuse me, didn't get suspended for one game because I hate to play the politic game here, TV, but like I just feel like that's not the message you want to send. Like physical play within the playoffs is kind of expected. So these kind of things, although Vic may have been a little bit over accentuated, these are the type of things that come with a very physical series. So I think that to eject him, I think would also kind of deflate the mood and the feeling around what this series has been built into. And I don't know if that's I don't know if that's the kind of precedent you want to set.
I get what you mean. My like thought process into why they didn't do it is more like, I mean, he basically like missed all of last game anyway. The Spurs lost, and his presence was truly felt. I think if this play happened maybe at the end of the fourth quarter, they would have suspended him for the next game just to really kind of like put the foot down in that end because like so he can like kind of serve his suspension. But he missed most of the last game anyway. The Spurs lost. I think they kind of felt the effects of the missing Wemby at that point. So I think that's why they then end up suspending him further than that. But I'm surprised again. I agree with you. I'm surprised that they didn't have any fine like set up or anything just baked in for something like that. So yeah, series decided at 2-2. It could really go like either way. Man, I can't believe Anthony Edwards is freaking like back out here and just playing as well as he is. This guy was supposed to miss the series. You ought to
Yeah.
remember. And he's playing this damn good. Shout out to him. And the Wolves might end up back in the third conference finals. Who freaking knows? So yeah, shout out to them. Next series though, final series we're gonna discuss here. The Cleveland Cavaliers taking on the Detroit Pistons. This series is tied up at 2 apiece. Jay, the Cavs still haven't won a game on the road, won every single game at home, and the Pistons gave up a pretty bad one in the last one. They're tied 2-2. Kind of honestly expecting exactly where I thought things were going to end up after 4 games. What are your thoughts on the series?
This is gonna be pretty lame analysis, but I am kind of at a standstill as far as where I stand on this series. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Cleveland and the inability to win on the road creates a weird dynamic as far as like how that shakes down for them in the series. Because like if you're just gonna be a really good home team, then I mean, sure, this series goes 7 games just based off mathematics, but I mean, that just entails that you're also going to flame out in game 7. One thing I do really like from the most recent victory is that we got the D Mitch game. And you went off on this on TikTok, so I'm going to let you kind of get the runway on this one on the podcast as well. But Donovan Mitchell, 43 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 26 shots, 15 free throw attempts, 12 threes. Was only 4 of 12 from beyond the arc, but I think played really well across the board. Had a was second best on the team at plus 28 on the floor. Evan Mobley, 17 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. Still kind of wondering about, Evan Mobley's imprint on the series. Same thing could be said for Jared Allen as well, quite frankly. But I don't know. The ebbs and flows of this backcourt give them life. The struggles of their front court raise even further questions. On the Detroit Pistons side, Cade Cunningham has been everything Cade Cunningham has typically been throughout the entirety of this postseason. I think Game 4 may have been his most underwhelming performance of the entire playoffs, in my personal opinion. Um, and TV, I mean, we said this in the previous years against Orlando, like you can only get away with Tobias Harris being your best secondary creator for so long, right?
Yeah,
And that's
I mean
why
he's
Karis
been damn
LeVert ended
good
up having.
still. Yeah,
You
he's
said
still
what?
been damn good, but there's just not enough like
Yeah,
offensive.
he's been good throughout even this series. And you saw Karis LeVert step up in game 4,
Yeah, yeah,
24 points off the bench in 31 minutes, kind of to give them that extra juice as another individual creator. But like you said, like Toby's been good, but like it just feels like one of those things that, like, for example, a team like Cleveland that can really put up points in a hurry when their guards are playing at a
yeah.
high clip, it's just hard to keep up when it's Cade. If Cade's having an off night and you need Toby to pick up the slack, you still kind of finding yourself at even instead of being able to play above the break. And then when you talk about the 3-point shooting that the Cleveland Cavaliers bring to the table and things of that nature, it just makes it where it's a really weird series overall. Again, I could see Detroit still winning this thing just based off of Cleveland's home versus road record situation in the playoffs so far. I could also see this being one where maybe Cleveland just mess around and wins the next two, right? If they can get that illustrious road win they desperately need in
Yeah.
this playoff, I think they can come back home and get the job done in game 6. It's a weird spot. Unlike the Minnesota Timberwolves San Antonio Spurs series, where I still think the Spurs can win this in 6 games, I don't really have a great beat on what I think this series will be for either of Cleveland or Detroit. I guess if I had to go on a limb, I would take Detroit in 7 games just based off the math. But I don't love it. I don't love it, but I don't love picking Cleveland either right now. So it's a weird spot to be in with the way they're both playing.
No, and I think the way that you're putting it, and it's kind of I'm in the same place where it's like I don't feel that much different from the beginning of the series, and now we're 4 games in. I don't feel much different about it either because
Yes.
everything that we thought was going to happen ended up happening. Where yes, Cade Cunningham is a damn good offensive engine. Tobias Harris has been pretty damn good in the playoffs, and if the defense falls, they're going to win games like they saw in game 1 and 2, even without
Yeah.
Jalen Duren. Jalen Duren has been losing money by the minute at this point.
By the
But
minute, my boy. I
yeah,
mean, literally might be losing a mill a minute the way he's playing right now.
honestly, man, 8 points a game, 9, just tough, rough, rough, rough. But on the Cavs side of things, the they go where that backcourt goes, and the backcourt in the last 2 games have been absolutely killing it. James Harden being that ultimate facilitator, he had his moments late in that game 4 win, but also he hit like the first 9 points for the Cavs in that game as well. So that he at least got himself going. But the real difference maker, and I think this is like where I thought the Cavs were gonna end up coming on top at the beginning of this series. If Donovan Mitchell in these last two games, 35 points in game three, 43 points in game four, if we can see this Donovan Mitchell, this version of Donovan Mitchell, the guy who was top six in NBA history in points per game in the playoffs, the guy who we've seen go toe to toe with Jamal Murray, 50 points in the bubble, the guy who in round one last year had multiple 40 bombs, then that's going to be the extra touch that this Cavs team is going to get. Because even though you said that Evan Mobley hasn't really had his imprint on this team offensively, and fair enough, his defense has been stellar. His defense has been absolutely stellar throughout this entire series, even in comparison to that Raptors series in round one. But this Cavs team can only go so as far as this backcourt can go. That's where they invested their money. That's why they made the change for James Harden, because they didn't think that Darius Garland was going to make it this far, or he's going to be as impactful as someone like James Harden. When these two guys are clicking, and we saw what happens when Donovan Mitchell was clicking yesterday, 39 points in the second half, the most playoff points in a half in NBA history. I think he tied with someone from the 70s or whatever. But when this backcourt has it, the Pistons just don't have any answer. As great as their defense can be, they just don't have the offensive firepower to match up with it. In the two games that they won, when they started to slow down Donovan Mitchell and James Harden, they had just enough offense to pull it out. Here, when the Cavs have the offense going, the Pistons don't have the way to catch up, and that's the way the Cavs are going to win it. And if Donovan Mitchell can continue to play as good on the road as he did at home, this is where I could see, okay, this is where the Cavs clearly have the advantage, and they need to take advantage of that, because the Pistons, like they showed in round one, they just don't have enough firepower. Maybe they found some, found treasure there with Karis LeVert and Paul Reed in game four. Maybe they have to start relying more on that, but the Cavs, we said before the series, they have the overwhelming offensive talent, and they showed that in these last two games.
Yeah, I mean, Cavs definitely have all of the pieces there. And I think you made a really great point about the whole they go as the backcourt goes. We've seen that in this series. I mean, even dating back to, remember the conversation we had in depth about the turnovers having so much influence on the series. When those guys not are just on as far as offensively, but as far as also taking care of the basketball, it significantly changes the mathematics for this
Yeah.
team as far as how well they play and what they're able to do on that side of the floor. I mean, again, I feel like this is one of those things where the momentum is slowly but surely swinging in favor of the Cleveland Cavaliers. But again, that
They need to
lack of
win on
road
the
success.
road.
Yeah, that lack of road success is creating its own real question marks where I'm like, I can't lean all the way into that just yet. I cannot lean into believing in them all the way, knowing that they have not solved that problem yet.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of the turnovers, you could tell that like when these guys are locked in, that the turnovers are not much of an issue. They average a combined less than 5 turnovers a game between Mitchell and Harden, and their wins the series. That is such a big thing here. If they're able to hold on to the ball and actually get their shots off, actually get into their flow offensively, this team is tough to beat. And I don't care how good of a defensive team the Pistons are. These are some of the greatest offensive weapons that the league has today.
Yeah.
So there is a path for the Cavs for victory, but I'm not. Again, this is where you said like I don't know how to feel, because it feels like two different teams we're seeing from the Cavs on the road in the playoffs. If once I see that change, and Jay, I don't know if you know this saying. I think this is a pretty like common saying in the NBA. The series doesn't start until the road team wins. The series doesn't start.
Well,
Technically, the playoffs haven't started for the freaking Cavaliers because they haven't won a road game at all. so
right.
so they're gonna have to switch that up. But if they're able to somehow finish this in the game seven, or if they can get this win tonight as of recording, this is gonna change my whole not my whole view on the Cavs, but it's gonna give me that extra bit of confidence that I need. I know that this Cavs, at least you can rely more on their offense going into a New York Knicks series, which they're gonna definitely need because the Knicks have all of that offensive weapon as well. But until they win on the road, I'm not fully convinced.
Yeah, I think that just, I mean, it just leaves so much to wonder. Yeah, it just leaves so much to wonder. I mean, I don't have a ton more to necessarily add
Yeah,
on it because I mean that is going to be the biggest question. Game 5 just became that much more important, right? I think if you're the Cleveland Cavaliers, like I think if you get that done, Game 6,
You're already driving.
You're essentially putting the Detroit Pistons back into PTSD mode, right?
Yeah,
Where this could be as simple as Game 5, win on the road for the Cleveland Cavaliers, go this time. I guess they would be going on the road, or what was it? Game 5, you win on the road, come back home in Game 6 with a chance to close the series out. It's essentially the exact same scenario the Detroit Pistons were in early in the series against the Orlando Magic. Very, very similar. So you put them
yeah,
in a situation where their backs are up against the wall, like you said, Cleveland back in the driver's seat again, in a way that I think they kind of should have been coming into the series. Yeah, Game 5 is critical for Cleveland. I'm not saying that they lose the series if they lose Game 5, but I'm way more worried about them if they can't get this road win in Game 5. Um, that's gonna be a major out.
yeah. No, great game five is just so critical in order for this, just to kind of just change the narrative for any of these teams. If any of these teams like want to show us like anything different from what we saw from the beginning of the series, they're gonna have to do it in game five. So that's why this game is so pivotal. If the Cavs are able to finally win on the road, this could really be the turning point for them, and maybe this is them really involving themselves in the playoffs and really showing themselves as a potential contender over here. But yeah, those are our thoughts on the series. Let us know down below what you guys think. Any other thoughts on the playoffs that we didn't have get to talk about? Any thoughts on the eliminated teams? Let us know in the comment section down below. Jay, it's been a busy week in basketball, bro, because the NBA playoffs have been here. We've been talking about it. It's been a great time, but another big event has happened. One of the probably NBA Twitter's most favorite events of the year at this point, which is the NBA draft lottery. And Jay, this year it did not disappoint again. Maybe not to the levels of the Mavericks getting the number one pick last year after trading away Luka Doncic, but pretty damn good because there are so many things that that happened in this draft lottery, and I'm not even gonna try and bring up all of them. We're just gonna go back and forth and give our biggest takeaways from this draft lottery. But I guess the biggest thing here is that the Wizards won the number one overall pick. Jay, what is kind of like your biggest takeaway from this draft lottery from what you saw?
I mean, well, I'm obviously biased, TV,
Yep. Yep.
because
Okay, let's hear it.
if we're gonna be honest, the biggest takeaway is that the Bulls got top 4 now. Now, would you love to have AJ DeMonta? By the way, I live in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm a hop skip away from where Washington plays. So personally, I also am a very big victor in this situation because the Washington Wizards are not that far away. And if they do decide to go with AJ DeMonta, as everything indicates they will and should, I will be able to see at least 40 games potentially of AJ DeMonta in a Washington Wizards uniform. And I love that. But let's talk about the Bulls for a second, because the Bulls, in this will be the first official season of the rebuild era. We bring in Bryce Graham to
Yeah.
help take over at the general manager spot. Beautiful decision. Still trying to figure out the coaching situation. Sounds like there's a lot of static around Sean Sweeney of the San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah.
I've heard Micah Nori's name come up, another assistant, and ironically is also in that same series of the Minnesota Timberwolves. So
Yeah.
there are some real coaching candidates out there, and I would not be surprised if the Bulls wait until the series between these two teams finalizes. Quite frankly, I wouldn't even be surprised if their guy just is Sean Sweeney, and it's gonna be up to Sweeney to either choose the Bulls, or Sweeney's name has also came up in conversations around the Orlando Magic as well. So it feels like there's an understanding of where things are heading, you know, and from a draft pick perspective, would you love to be number one and get AJ DeBanza? Of course. But in a draft class where they told us coming in that, yeah, there's 9 guys that really come to mind, but it's a 4-player draft as far as tier 1 guys are concerned.
Yeah.
The Bulls finally didn't get 7, TV. You know what I mean? Like, this is the team that just always find themselves right outside the bucket of where you need them to be at in order to get the job done and get themselves that blue chip prospect. It was just last season that they were a coin flip away from being the team that was supposed to get Cooper Flag, right?
Yeah.
This season, they find themselves in a position where also They can't flub it up, TV. They can't mess it up. Sure, you don't get AJ DeBonta, but by the pick 4, you're going to get either of Darren Peterson, who can work as a really good off-ball guard next to Josh Giddey in the backcourt, Cameron Boozer for a team that really doesn't have a definitive center right now, or Caleb Wilson, who might be the best of the group from a fit perspective, and also can finally help us get rid of those horrid Patrick Williams minutes. Either way, at 4, you can't mess up. And I love that for Chicago because, quite frankly, they need a layup, man. They need a layup. And AJ
They needed
DeBosa would
one.
have been
They
a
needed
pretty
one.
easy pick. But at 4, just taking whoever the best player available is out of what's left by the time you get past those top 3 kind of still leaves the Bulls in a situation where they can't go wrong.
You say that. You say that. I'm just kidding. You should be able to get a.
I
Hey,
should.
look.
I have
Hey,
a
look.
little bit
You know
more
who
faith
your
in
last
this
number
group.
4 was. You have to remember who your last number 4 was.
That is true. Because the last number 4 is the guy that I'm hoping this number 4 will replace. So we'll have to see.
Yeah.
We'll have to see how this whole
Yeah.
thing goes. But
Yeah. No.
personally, I
100%.
believe that the other thing about that last number 4 was many weren't necessarily sure what the answer for the Bulls were when they took Patrick Williams, right? In my mind and a lot of people's minds, that year, the belief was that they were either going to go with Denny Avdia or Killian Hayes. Now, taking Patrick Williams found themselves somewhere in the middle of those two.
Yeah.
Very, very much in the middle of those two. And I would have loved Denny Avdia, and I literally was sick to my stomach when I found out we didn't take Denny Avdia. But nonetheless, I feel like this is a situation where, compared to even that draft class, number 4 is just way more blatantly obvious
Yes.
between whether it's Boozer, Peterson, or Caleb Wilson of just
Yeah.
take the guy. Whoever it is that's available, take the guy. He's a blue chip automatic dude that you should be able to get legit starter minutes from. I mean, sure, Caleb Wilson could be a little intriguing because you have Matas Buzelis, but I think Matas Buzelis is more of a true 3.
Yeah.
Caleb Wilson is a true power forward. I think that you could say the same thing about Cameron Boozer, who I think is more of a legit power forward than a starting center, but I think he could play small ball center for a Chicago Bulls team that I think is still going to try to keep that run and gun up and down
Yeah.
the court philosophy that made them
Caleb.
so good
Yeah.
early on in the
Caleb
season
would be
last year.
perfect. Caleb would
Yeah.
be perfect there. I mean, especially since your GM has been like, I think like what's the acronym? SLAP that they've been
Yeah.
using,
Yeah.
SLAP or whatever it's called. It's like what I think it's like length, speed, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
It fits. It fits the Caleb Wilson profile.
So his philosophy from a drafting perspective is very similar to like the Seattle Seahawks format of like height, weight, speed, translation.
Yeah.
Like if you're a guy who just has all the physical intangibles, look at the Oklahoma City Thunder and how they tend to draft, right? Like if you have all of the physical tool intangibles, then we can teach you how to play our brand of basketball. But we need the things that make you a
Winner,
viable,
like,
high upside winning player
yeah.
to then translate to, okay, we put the pieces together. I think if you look at Oklahoma City's progression, if you remember, they used to be this height, weight, speed type of team once upon a time too. That's how they ended up with players like Hamidou Diallo once upon a
Yeah.
time, was because
Terrence
of that
Ferguson,
athletic
yeah,
upside.
yeah.
Yes, great
Yeah.
example. Terrence Ferguson, another
Yeah.
one of using guys of that ilk as this example of like, they've got all of the physical tools. The issue was that OKC didn't have a identity to then manifest it into. They've now established that behind the back of guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren, and now those other guys fit this moldability where, yes, you have small guards on the team like Cason Wallace and Jarrett McCain and Alex Caruso, but they all bring a particular translatable skill, whether it's point of attack defense, floor spacing, on-ball creation, right? That still fits a philosophy for Oklahoma City that translates well in their rotation. I think Chicago, this new regime is going to do their best, starting with this number 4 pick, of trying to embody that idea of, okay, we want to have athletes, we want to run and gun, we want to be able to take advantage of the fact that Josh Giddey is very, very good in transition. Your boy Noah Essengay, Found
Yeah.
out he's 7 foot now. All of a sudden, I'm messing with what that could possibly lead
Yeah.
to. There's a lot to like about this Chicago Bulls team right now, and again, I feel like number 4 was the perfect spot to find themselves in a space where they just couldn't mess it up, right? I think also number 4 puts them in a spot where it takes a guard off the table, right? Because I think outside of Darren Peterson, who's like more of a combo guard,
Hmm.
once you get past 4, a lot of the names from 5 through 9 are primarily the guard position.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily know if that's where the Bulls need to go
Yes.
in
Yeah.
this draft class, right? So I think landing at number 4, it takes a lot of the complications off the table for them. The Bulls could still find a way to mess it up. My belief is that with the new regime and with some of the things that we've already heard so far, that I think they're going to tackle this kind of by the book, and I think I think we're going to see exactly what we expect. And I think that's going
Yeah.
to be that they're going to take best player available. It's going to fit like a glove, and they're going to get a guy who should arguably be like a day one starter.
Yeah, no, 100%. I like that the Bulls were able to jump in here. And yeah, you guys needed it. You guys needed this. Hopefully, this number 4 goes a lot better than the Marcus Pfizer's of the world, which you drafted number 4 in the past, or the Patrick Williams of the world. So hopefully it does get better than that. But yeah, super happy for the Bulls to do that. Again, some of my biggest takeaways: two of the teams that made some big time low, I think buy low trades at the deadline, kind of got rewarded here. The Washington Wizards adding Trae Young and Anthony Davis, probably add AJ DeBonta to that mix of winning the draft. And same thing with the freaking Utah Jazz, who traded for Jaren Jackson Jr., got the number 2 overall pick. It's funny because the whole new draft lottery system next year is going to be a lot different. Obviously, though, the teams with like 4 to 10 are going to have the better odds than like the top 3, yada yada yada. But the fact that these two teams, who were shamelessly taking probably since the trade deadline, end up with the picks. I find that absolutely hilarious. You could say that, oh, Adam Silver rigged this so the teams that were buying, get rewarded a little bit. But also, this is the teams that Adam Silver were trying to avoid, trying to get the number 1 and 2 picks if you're the Washington Wizards and the Jazz. Because, bro, I mean, we saw near the end of the year, the Jazz were getting fined for their tanking practices late in the season. The Washington Wizards just set Alex Sarr down because why the heck not? And we're playing some of the worst lineups, including getting put 83 points on by Bam Adebayo near the end of the season. But somehow, some way, these two teams with some of the worst records in the league finally got the picks, and probably the last year of this draft lottery format.
Yeah, I think another way to look at it though is these two teams in particular also were rewarded picks that kind of vault them into go mode, which I really, really like. Like for example, landing the number 1 overall pick for the Washington Wizards, it really puts them in a interesting situation. You got Trae Young, Keyshawn George was really, really solid last year. You still have
Yeah.
Bilal Coulibaly, Anthony Davis, Alex Sarr. Strong defensive infrastructure around Trae Young. And then you bring in AJ DeBonta, another offensive leading player that can be, I think, a plus defender at the next level with the height, weight, speed element that he brings to the table, and a really good foul drawer as well that I think
Yeah.
can be a good element for the offensive side of the ball for this Washington Wizards team. Flesh out the depth a little bit more with guys like Bub Carrington, Trey Johnson. I liked Will Riley this past season as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure, it bumps like the Cam Whitmores and the Jaden Hardys of the world out of the rotation, but I don't think that you sweat that when you get a guy like AJ DeBonta. I think there's a world where you could even run AJ at the 2 next to Trey
Yeah.
Young, and you got Bilal Coulibaly and AJ DeBonta as part of that 2-man game at the wing spots, and then you got the rim protection of Anthony Davis and Alex Sarr down below the basket. I mean, there's a lot to really like where Washington is like a legitimate force in the Eastern Conference next year with that starting 5. If you keep Anthony Davis, you have Trae Young, and then you get AJ DeBonta in the mix. And then if you go to Utah, right, and you look at their roster, the expectation is that they're going to bring that they're going to bring Walker Kessler back this offseason, right? Unrestricted free agent, but likely going to be a guy that they throw some real money at to
Yeah.
retain. You have Keontae George, who showed that he could be the guy for you at point guard this year.
Yeah.
Despite all of the when it came to sitting guys and all types of different stuff this season, Keontae George proved himself this year, right?
Yeah,
You bring in I mean, so you bring in somebody who I think could be a legit number two, in that backcourt in who would be Darren Peterson, who fits very easily at that spot. Now you have Laurie Marketed, Jaron Jackson Jr. and Walker Kessler to round out that starting five. You got Ace Bailey, a former top 7 pick, coming off the bench for you. Bryce
yeah,
Sensabaugh really liked what he brought to the table last season. Kyle Filipowski really showed some stuff last year as
yeah.
well. All of a
Both,
sudden, to that 8-man rotation sounds like a team that could at least make some noise in the Western Conference next year, right? And
both teams are going to compete. Both teams are going to
yeah,
compete.
I think that's the overarching point I'm making here is I feel like although yes, they did tank-tastic their way into these picks, and you don't love that they were rewarded, so to speak, for them. But I think these are two teams that by landing in these particular spots, compared to like even the Memphis Grizzlies, for example, right, who feel like they're about to go into a full-blown rebuild with a John Morant trade any day now, or even the Chicago Bulls, who are basically just now starting their full reboot. These are two teams that all they needed was one more real blue chip guy, and now they're off to the races. And they landed in the exact spots necessary for them to get blue chip guys that not only like will help elevate them next season, but I think fit their exact needs going into next year as well.
No, like these like fit like you mentioned. These picks feel like they fit in like gloves. I love that AJ Bonds is going to a team where the pressure is not on him to be that number one superstar type of guy, and he gets to like kind of be around a Trae Young and Anthony Davis in that aspect where kind of in that VJ Edgecombe sort of way like last year where he kind of goes in and is like, yeah, you're not going to be the number one or two option, but you can really find your place here and you could still be one of the best rookies, if not like one of the best like upcoming superstars in this draft. And I feel like AJ Bonsa has that very similar opportunity. And then same thing with Darren Peterson. That's literally the position that the Jazz need the most. An off guard two. They have enough forward play. They have Keontae George. Everything just kind of fits into a glove the way it's supposed to. Even like I know we're not gonna talk about this much, but Memphis Grizzlies getting Cam Boozer. You need someone who's gonna freaking um get you points once you trade away John Morant, and Cam Boozer is definitely gonna be that guy if you end up drafting him with number 3. So not only did I feel like this top four kind of really like played itself out nicely in terms of the teams needing it, but also it's good fits for these rookies coming in. So super excited about that. My only thing here is, look, I know people are talking about this, but Utah, the owner of the Utah Jazz, brought AJ DeBonsa to BYU, which is in Utah. The Utah Jazz owner funds the BYU program. Basically has had AJ DeBonsa in his sights for the last 4 to 5 years. Do they move up, Jay? Do they somehow try to move up and like try and like make sure they get their guy, their somewhat hometown guy?
Yeah, so it's funny that you bring this up because I'm actually kind of like looking into stuff right now, and I've been kind of like muddling over this over the last day or two of like, what would the price be to move up? Mind you, this Utah Jazz team was the same team that spurned Washington just last year. Remember,
Mm-hmm.
last year, Ace Bailey was Washington's guy.
Yeah,
Ace Bailey was Washington's guy, and Utah, despite all of reports like indicating that Ace Bailey like was shooting to land in Washington, Utah took him anyway, right? And you wonder, like, could you convince the Washington Wizards, A, swap us number 2 and Ace Bailey for number 1? And to me, the weird thing about it is like that feels way too expensive. No matter how good I may think AJ DeBonsa is, I really wonder if that is a little too expensive of a price for a Utah Jazz team that's still so early in what should be a competitive basketball team next season, right? Because Ace Bailey plus whoever, likely a guy like Darren Peterson, next season is much more valuable overall from a depth perspective going into next season So you're banking on AJ DeBonce's overall talent upside to make up for that. And I wonder if that means if Utah just believes that that's a risk worth taking. I think on the opposite end of the spectrum, does
The Wizards
Washington
do that.
yeah,
Wizards
does
do that.
Washington want the run back at Ace Bailey so bad that they're willing to make the opposite move and take Ace Bailey in? You still get the number 2 overall pick, puts you in a position where I mean, if you think about it, again, still a very good situation for them. They get Darren Peterson. Now, yes, it bumps someone like Bub Carrington legitimately to the
Or
bench. It
Trey
bumps
Johnson,
Keyshawn
yeah.
Johnson. Yeah, now you have a little bit of a logjam with Trey Johnson, Bub Carrington, and Keyshawn George all probably coming off the bench in favor of Darren Peterson. But that also feels kind of like a good problem to have in a sense as
Yeah.
well. And then you still add Ace Bailey, who can be a legitimate 3 option for you next to Bilal Coulibaly in that rotation. Like it does still give you real depth on a team that
Yeah.
still has real questions about who the long-term guys are, right? So like you said, does Washington see Ace Bailey as so valuable that Ace plus the number 2 pick is like not seen as just highway robbery for a talent in AJ DeBonsa? That's gonna
Yeah.
go based off your scouting preference of how far. This is an interesting question for Washington to have to kind of figure out. How far is the talent gap between Ace Bailey and AJ DeBonsa? Because if the gap is small, you get Ace and number 2. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
If the gap is wide, you're banking on a lot of things to go right between both Ace and whoever you take at number 2 to hopefully make up that gap in talent.
Yeah. I don't think they would do it for just Ace. If there was maybe like a late protected first round pick, like alongside with it, that's when like the conversation starts to become interesting.
Well, you have to give up 2 TV. There's no way they
Yeah.
give up Ace in like a late. They're gonna have to do a pick swap within this draft.
Yeah.
That's why I said I think pick 2 and Ace Bailey is probably the starting price, but I also think it might be very steep.
Yeah, no, I think in a situation, I don't think it's worth it for the Utah Jazz to make that sort of trade. If I'm Washington, if there's a second first round pick and you get Ace Bailey involved, you'll take the Derek Peterson addition to the team alongside of Trey Young, which it's a pretty damn good fit as well. So it's gonna be interesting to see how far is Utah gonna get to try and get their homegrown guy in a sense to stay like over there in Utah. But if things are the way they are, I think each of the top 4 are very very satisfied with that. But those are the winners, Jay. Those are the big winners. We talked about your Bulls. We talked about those teams. Even the Memphis Grizzlies, who are moving on to John Morant era, definitely a big winner here. But Jay, the couple of losers. The Brooklyn Nets fall again. The Sacramento Kings fall again, and the Indiana Pacers lose their pick. It sucks because the Brooklyn Nets traded with the Houston Rockets to get their picks back, and both picks ended up being 6 and 7, which is really unfortunate on their end. The Kings, after winning a couple games there in April, basically fluffed their chances of getting a top 4 pick. And then the Pacers kind of big brain move that they were trying to do and trying to get Zubac and still maintain a top 4 pick didn't work. It in terms of there's definitely a lot of good winners. And of course, the Clippers are the winners in that aspect of trying to trade Zubac for basically 2 unprotected picks, Ben Mathurin and Isaiah Jackson. But man, there are definitely some losers that might have some kind of detrimental effects on some of these franchises. Maybe not the Pacers, but the other 2 for sure.
I think, for example, if you look at a team like Indiana, right? If we're talking about the losers' perspective, a lot of people are gonna look at Indiana and call them losers, and it's because like, yo, you gave up the 5th overall pick in a pretty stacked draft class for Ivica Zubac, essentially. And I think that's a little too surface level TV. And I've
For
heard
sure.
this
100%.
explanation a little bit already, so I won't like overtell it in case certain people have already heard it before. But like, this team desperately needed a legitimate center, right? Like, Jay Huff cannot be your starting center going into next season, right? Right?
Yeah.
That just feels like a logical thing to say. We also already pointed out earlier on in the podcast that this felt like a four-player draft. And then after the top four, there's a lot of guards between 5 and 9 as the projected quote unquote best players available in that range. At pick number 5, Indiana would have been either pigeonholed into grabbing another guard that they don't need, or reaching really, really high on a Jaden Quaintance or a day Mara, I believe
Mara.
is his name,
Yeah.
from Michigan, and reaching really high on one of those guys at the center position, versus getting an established guy in a Vika Zubac who was just in the Defensive Player of the Year running a year ago, right? Legitimately an All NBA caliber defender at the center position just a season ago. And you get him on one of the more favorable contracts in the NBA, mind you, in a world, by the way, in a world where TV knows too well, guys like Jakob Poeltl are making $20 million a year.
Yeah.
Here we are with a Vika Zubac between $18 to $21 million a year, and he's got way more upside as far as productivity on both sides of the floor. This is in a world where Kristaps Porzingis could be making 20 plus million, in a world where Nikola Vucevic has made 20 plus million, right? And a Vika Zubac on $18 to $21 million, favorable contract with a lot of upside to be really productive for this Indiana Pacers team. So although Indiana may be viewed as a loser, and I think it depends a lot on just what happens at number 5. Let's say the Bulls fold and they just decide, hey, we want to move off from Josh Giddey. We're going to start off with that by trading. Excuse me, we're going to start off with that by, instead of taking Caleb Wilson, we're going to take Darius Acuff with number 4.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, Caleb Wilson goes number 5 to the Clippers. Maybe you start to backtrack on that a little bit, because like Caleb Wilson might mess around and actually be like a dude, a real dude in this league. As a Bulls fan, I hope he does.
Yeah.
Now you're concerned. But if the draft board falls the way a lot of people expected, where it's AJ number 1, Darren Peterson number 2, Cam Boozer off the board at number 3, and then, Caleb Wilson at number 4, you're pretty happy as the Indiana Pacers knowing that that 5th overall pick was just going to be a guy who gets thrown into an already pretty crammed guard rotation. Or you're reaching up way too high on a center, or you're trading back anyway.
Yeah. It obviously it sucks because, like, again, it is like this is probably like at the end of the day, you're looking at this thinking, man, we tanked this whole year all to get to lose our pick for like in this trade. And you can definitely look at it like that. But at the end of the day, you did miss out on the top 4. That was kind of the biggest prize there. And you wouldn't have lost it if you ended up in the top 4 anyway. So I think people are definitely blowing this out of proportion. I think they will still be happy. It just really depends on how Zubac performs this year, as to see like if the 5th overall pick does become worth it. Because again, they're really banking, even though like we didn't see much of Zubac this year, banking on last year's Zubac being the consistent for them going forward. Yes, it's a good contract and all that, but they really need him to be that, because that's what's going to help them go from title contender to potential title winner. That's the type of like move that they're hoping to have with the Ivica Zubac move. So yes, it does suck, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's like the end of the world like many people are thinking. I am 100% like with you. As for the Clippers, you got to be happy that you're able to get the 5th overall pick for Ivica Zubac. If you're moving away from this sort of era of the Clippers, the fact that you got the 5th overall pick, young player Ben Mathurin, and you get the 2029 unprotected pick, you're laughing. You're absolutely laughing, and you're very happy that Zubac gave you one last favor before you head out. But I guess before we move on, Jay, these two teams, the Brooklyn Nets, Sacramento Kings, fell pretty bad here, and it's like it doesn't look good for both of these teams.
Sacramento can't catch a break, can they, man?
Never.
Now, there's a world where this could work out for them. And it all is just going to bank on what guard they get, right? Like, a lot of the mocks are having Darius Acuff as the guy. And I think that for a team that needs some real electricity at that guard position, Darius brings all of that, and then some. I think there's a lot of upside, especially as an offensive player. Defensively, there's a ton of questions,
Yeah.
but offensively, there's a lot to love about what he can do as a individual shot creator, as a facilitator, especially in the transition game. I think this is a guy who, I mean, I don't think they should hold on to your Zach Levines of the world and things of that nature, right? But my backcourt of him and Zach Levine from an athleticism standpoint and from a scoring standpoint, I mean, they could light teams up. They could really light teams up next season. I think the pick and roll game between Darius Acuff and Domantas Sabonis could be really good given the fact that Darius navigates really well on ball in those actions. And I think if he can get in really good pick and roll actions with Domantas Sabonis, you could see a lot of situations where Darius takes advantage of his speed. And with that open space that's created by Domantas Sabonis, can kind of play that battering ram style he had at Arkansas, where he was just a dude who got to the rim at will. Dangerous, lethal 3-point shooter as well in college. There's a lot to like. So yes, you go to 7, and you hate that as a team that really, really does need a blue chip guy. But Darius, I think, does fall in that category. And if that's someone they can land, you're not mad at it. Brooklyn, another guard, TV?
They had 5 first-round picks last year, and they can't even get one of the top guys here. This whole trading for your picks back really did not work out well for them.
Not at all. I mean, they find themselves in a situation. If I'm them, I'm going to be honest, this feels like a team that. This feels like a team that really may consider trading back. I could really see them considering trading back. And I know it sounds insane to think of this team trying to get multiple bites at the apple again in a draft class. But like I mean, sure, you can draft another guard because nobody from last year's draft necessarily proved themselves to be like a standout figure. I like Yegor Demon a lot, but like that shouldn't stop you from drafting like a Michael Brown Jr. or like a Keaton Wagler if he falls to you, or a Darius Acuff if they fall to you. Darius Acuff in Brooklyn would also be really dope, and I really like Keaton Wagler as a fit there as well. But like, I could also just see a world where they're like, we can't possibly take another guard right now, and I don't think there's anybody at a different position that screams take them in the top 10.
Yeah, no, it's just it was a rough look of the draw for the Brooklyn Nets, because again, yeah, like you mentioned, they drafted like 3 guards last year, and they didn't. Did they want to add another guy to that room? Probably not. Are they gonna reach for someone like you mentioned of the Ademora type of range? Are they gonna go this high for a Heinz Steinbeck? Probably not. So it's gonna be interesting to see. Maybe a team like the Heat or the Thunder want to move up. I mean, the Thunder have a freaking chestload of picks. Maybe they wouldn't mind moving up to try and get one of these like great guards to kind of build for the future and get ready for when you have to pay your current roster and you can get some more guys on rookie contracts. Who knows? But at the end of the day, I just think again, even though like there's a lot of talent at those 2 picks, if you're the Kings, if you're the Nets, the way the season like played out for you, the fact that all of this happens and you end up the 6th and the 7th pick, rough, absolutely rough if you're both of these teams.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of great winners. Again, shout out to the Clippers. I mean, they can finally get their guard for the future. Who knows who they want to play next to Darius Garland, or even if they have Darius Garland in their future plans, they have a lot of great options here to kind of move forward with. But yeah, there's a lot of great winners, but also, yeah, some of these teams, Pacers, Nets, and Kings, definitely felt bad. Any final thoughts on this draft before we move on?
I think that overall the draft landed in a pretty cool way. Like, I feel like,
Yeah.
again, I know I'm a little biased because the Bulls landed in the top 4, but I think
I'm happy
beyond
about that
that,
too.
I feel like this group landed in a really particular way where I feel like each of the prospects that are mainly in that top 10 I think kind of fit like a glove exactly with the order of the teams as they are. So I could see this being one where unless like somebody decides to like do a trade out, I could see this being one of them where like a lot of people's mock drafts through the first like 10 picks are spot on because it just feels like the puzzle pieces are perfect.
Yeah, no, and I'm super excited to see how this draft is going to end up flying out. Let us know down below what you guys think. Um, about like where you think these guys are gonna end up going, what's gonna end up with these picks. We want to hear your thoughts down below. Jay, yeah, no, we've been agreeing on this episode. We're gonna end up only doing one of these teams now for the final, for the post mortem here. We're gonna have multiple episodes out this week, guys. So if you want to hear more about this post mortem stuff, because there's gonna be a lot of dead time with the NBA. So we have another episode coming out later out this week with a lot of these teams that got eliminated. But we're gonna try to do one to close out today's episode. And Jay, we're gonna stick to the lottery here because one of the teams that ended up in the lottery, even though they made the playoffs, got eliminated after losing, and by like what, Jay, like 50 plus points almost in their final game of the season. But they didn't luck out in getting a top 4 pick, but they still ended up with number 8, the Atlanta Hawks. And like we mentioned, like we did with the teams in the past, we're kind of doing the 2K style. Should this team be rebuilding? Should this team be buying? Should they be selling? Should they be contending? But with the 8th overall pick, you move off of the Trae Young trade. You have a lot of great playoff type players, but clearly maybe you're not comfortable with having Jalen Johnson as your number 1 just yet, but who knows going into next year. What do you think the Hawks team's goal is going into this offseason, Jay?
I think there's probably three things they're legitimately trying to figure out, right? I think number one is the point guard spot. I mean, you love Nickeil Alexander-Walker and what he's brought to the table this year, but particularly with questions about whether or not CJ McCollum will be on this team next season, you want to really explore shot creation at that position in a way that I think will be pretty important, right? Because I feel like the shot creation of CJ McCollum individually in this playoffs was one of the calling cards of why they were so good. And I think it was also one of the bigger parts of why they were so good down the stretch this season in general, right? So I think they're gonna obviously take a look at that point guard spot. And they have a really good chance to do something with that given their spot in the lottery. I think that the Jonathan Kuminga element of this is also going to be a big talking point as far as what his future with this team is, because they don't necessarily need to extend him, but I think that he did a really good job of earning an extension with the way that he played in his time with the Atlanta Hawks this season. And then number 3, and I think this is the most interesting one because I don't necessarily know if it'll take fruition in the offseason, but I could see it being something that at least by the trade deadline becomes a bigger topic, is I think they're going to find a way to move off of Zachary Risachet. I'm not sure what team it is. Hilariously enough, I've heard my Chicago Bulls come up a good handful in that kind of trade package. But I think that there's a world where actually a Jonathan Kuminga signing could only further seal the fate of Zachary Risachet as far as like trying to find a trade partner to take him.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting because he felt like, again, he still feels like the odd man out in the situation, but it's still young enough in his career where people will take a chance on him. You mentioned your Chicago Bulls. My Raptors have been kind of floating the idea of adding him somehow in some sort of multi-team trade to get off one of our contracts as well. But at the end of the day, this Hawks team, like I said off the top, I feel like they have a lot of players that could do really well in the championship team. I feel like they're still lacking that true alpha, that true number 1 guy. Jalen Johnson was fantastic this past year, but I don't know how comfortable the Hawks feel like getting him being the number 1 option on this team for the long term. I think that's why they were hoping like for the best with this Pelicans pick, so that the choice could be made for them, right? You get a Darren Peterson, you get a AJ DeBonta, you can kind of position them there where they can play off of Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson could be the clear number 2. But now you have a roster with the Hawks, and like you mentioned, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels, CJ, Kuminga, Okongwu. A lot of guys that could be like really good pieces for a playoff / contending team. But they just don't have the top end talent to do so. I think that this team, more than anything, should continue I wouldn't say like completely buy in, but I would say like more of like a sit still and kind of see like what you guys have around you. You can't tell like if Jalen Johnson's going to be the number one guy after one season. You want to see how he does after this year, but you want to see if this like a lot like these productions from a lot of your auxiliary players like the Nickel Alexander Walkers, if Destin Daniels can bounce back offensively. If this is more of a trend or more of a dead end for your team. So I think this is more of a wait and see. I think they will end up being buyers eventually, but I think this is more. Even though they did make the playoffs this year, this could be more of a gap year for the Atlanta Hawks coming up.
I also could see this being a team that tried to put the package together for a Giannis trade.
I
And
could
I've
see that. I was
seen
gonna say like, would they would 100% part with the eighth pick in order to get Giannis, and I think they have a decent amount of assets for it.
I think this is one of those teams that if you're not like a Portland, right, who has the Milwaukee Bucks picks, or you're not obviously, your Oklahoma City Thunder of the world who just got picks for days to throw out there. This is a team that from an asset perspective has a lot of interesting pieces they could use as a center of a Giannis trade. And clearly the Bucks will be looking for some kind of blue chip talent and draft capital.
Yeah,
Could you use the fact that you're in a little bit of a sign and trade scenario with Jonathan Kuminga as the centerpiece of a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade, right? I mean, that's an interesting way to look at it. I think that, of course, you're not giving up Jalen Johnson. I think you're doing your very best to leave someone like Nickeil Alexander-Walker out of a trade like this because I think his fit next to Giannis would be really, really good. But I mean, this is a world where even if you pick up uh his team option for $24 million, that does cover about half the price necessary to get
I
yourself
think yeah,
to a number that fits well for a Giannis trade. So
yeah,
even if you just pick up the team option for Jonathan Kuminga only to move him to Milwaukee in a trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo, that could also be an interesting feat that they explore. So they could be on either end of the spectrum. Like you said, this could be a gap year of just trying to figure out what the next step for this team is as far as having, because you remember, I mean, the beginning of last season was not good. Like this is a team that kind
yeah,
of found themselves in the second half of the season.
yeah,
So next year is going to be about like trying to figure out how real the post All-Star break version of the Hawks really was,
yeah.
right? Or really is, I guess you should say. But another end of the spectrum could be like, no, we believe that what we saw at the back half of last year is real, and now it's time to take the next step moving forward to be able to then put ourselves into contention to be in the ECF, to be a potential NBA Finals team. Remember, the last time the Atlanta Hawks got content after making a deep playoff run, I mean, we never saw any real version of postseason success from them again in the Trae Young era, and it eventually ended the Trae Young era during this season. So I think you have to take that learning experience and say we cannot afford to go into this offseason and just stand pat.
Yeah, but also I feel like expectations were different. I mean, I don't even think like after they made the Trae Young trade, like, did they really think they were gonna make the playoffs after
They
that?
definitely thought that TV. There was legit like press conference stuff after that series, after they flamed out in the Eastern Conference Finals, where they were like they kind of just felt good. They were kind of smelling their own,
No,
smelling
no.
themselves a
I
little
mean,
bit.
after the Trae Young trade, like, did they expect to make the playoffs after
Oh,
trading
I
for Trae
mean,
Young? I mean, it's a different expectation. That's more of what I'm
fair.
trying to get here. I feel like this was more like found money, especially with the CJ McCollum trade. He ended up being such like a great integral part of this playoff run. But at the
Okay.
same time, I feel like now, especially now you have the eighth pick, Jay, that's like right in the range of all those guards. They can get a Mikael Brown, they can get a Kingston Flemings, and they can kind of see how that fits in with their current core, and then see how this team goes together, and then make the steps towards that. That's why I feel like this is more of a gap year because I think they look at the position that they're in, and they're like, man, for a year now we need a point guard. There's plenty of good point guards in this range in the draft that we can take. So
True.
I think they are talented enough to get back to that point where they could be a playoff team. But are they trying to strive further, or are they trying to see like what they have and like who is going to be a long-term piece for them? I think that's going to be more of the ultimate goal of this season more than anything. I don't think it's them staying pat after a great run. I think it's them seeing, okay, which of this was found gold, which of this is fool's gold, and then now we can make the adjustments necessary in order to really take that next step.
I get that. I think that again, this is a team with a lot of range, and it's because of the
Yes,
depth that they have with this team and a lot of the young pieces they have. They have a lot of control over their draft capital as well in the future. This is a team that I could see choosing any real lane across the board because they do have the flexibility. And I think to build off of something you just said, they're coming off a season where they were playing with house money. Like again, the
exactly.
expectations
That's exactly what I was
after
saying.
the Trae
Yeah,
Young
yeah.
trade did create this thing where like, okay, we don't necessarily have to do anything, but we are in a position where we could be a better team with what we have available. We also could just run this thing back and see how it looks. Maybe get a player that fits the timeline a little bit better, but fits the criteria of what CJ McCollum brought to the table, right? Maybe you make a run at like an Anthony Simons in
Right.
free agency or someone of that ilk that fits the mold of the kind of player that you got that kind of production from, but just someone that's more on the timeline of the Jalen Johnsons, the Kumingas, the Nickeil Alexander-Walkers of the world, right? So I think that there is a lot for Atlanta to look at, and I think that they're going to be a team that could be one of the more interesting off seasons to watch because they have such a range of like what they could do.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm excited to see what they're going to end up doing, but at the same time, I'm very much excited to see if they can bring a lot of these same guys back. Yes, they need to address maybe some more of the center depth, but besides that, I'm super excited to see like what all of these young guys could do in this year to post Trae Young, first full year post Trae Young, and starting off with getting that point guard in that number 8 pick can really be the starting point of that. So I'm excited to see what they're going to end up doing. The draft is going to be a big focus. I don't think there's going to be many moves past that. But you never know. Like you mentioned, they have such a wide range of choices they could do. They could make a big move if they find the right offer. But yeah, like I mentioned, we're gonna talk more of these postmortems. A lot of teams have got eliminated, and we're gonna talk about that a lot in the next episode. You're getting a double upload this week, so you're gonna see more of this talk coming later on. But yeah, we've talked about at least the Atlanta Hawks. We want to hear your thoughts on them and what they should be able to do next, and maybe give your thoughts on who they should pick with the number 8 overall pick. But Jay, we talked about the playoffs, talked about the lottery, the Hawks. It's been another great episode. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Hey man, I think the post-mortem sections of these episodes are kind of my most favorite now, just because, don't get me wrong, the playoffs are always enjoyable and we love breaking them down. I think we also kind of get a kick out of breaking them down after the games and those deep dives that I've even done on short form, so definitely check those out as well. But I'll be quite frank with you. I think that we have a lot that we're going to be able to like get into. I mean, shoot, TV's probably looking at some news that dropped a second ago. That
Joe Morey's out of here.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's definitely going to be a lot. This is going to be an active off season, bro. So between the playoffs and a lot of the off season chatter going around, there's going to be a ton of things to get into, and I hope you guys lock in with the podcast for us to be able to break it down for you guys.
Yeah, no, 100%. I know there's going to be less series to talk about, but again, a lot of these teams to talk about, like poster elimination. Again, we got the WNBA stuff coming out soon. The NBA draft is coming up, so we're going to end up talking about more of who, of course, Jay wants to draft at number 4, all that type of stuff. So a lot of NBA content that's coming your way. So be on the lookout for that. And of course, you want to make sure you check us out on all forms of content, because we're giving you the recaps, we're giving you the clips, we're giving you all that stuff on all these different platforms. So make sure you check it out. And we have a lot more stuff to go to, especially as we go into the home stretch of the season. Conference finals coming up. Should be super fun to talk about. But yeah, it's the end of today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Again, thank you guys for all the support. We'll be back later on this week with a second episode, so be on the lookout for that. But yeah, Jay, it's been a fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you all have a fantastic day. This is Jay. This is TV. We're signing out. Peace.